Hello all, this is Danelle with the Octagon House, and if you're just joining us, I'm going to show you in as little time as possible how to stain your subfloor and get a cool look like this one. I wanted something cheap to do with my house that would still look really awesome, and when I searched could you paint your subfloor online, I did see a lot of videos of people painting their floor to look like wood floor, and I did see one where they just simply put a clear coat over the subfloor and it looked pretty cool, but I didn't see a lot of people painting actual shapes and designs on the floor itself. So I decided I might as well do it myself and then put it on here, so if anyone else wants to deborify their house, they can use this method. Step 1, rip up that carpet. And don't be surprised or grossed out by what you find underneath it. It'll be pretty gross. I mean, my house had pets in it before me, and the underside of my carpet was stained to infinity and beyond. But I lucked out because the guy who owned this house made sure that there was this awesome pet-proof carpet pad underneath the carpet, so none of those yucky stains got on my subfloor. If you're not so lucky, you may have to do a little extra sanding. The next thing you're going to want to do is sand all of those uneven spots between all of the cracks where all the different pieces of plywood meet. And you may have floor like I do here with the crisscross shape on top, or you may have actual just plain plywood. Either should work because it's all wood and it can all stain. Now I used a hand belt sander. You can use all kinds of things. This room was actually kind of tiny, so doing the cracks and stuff was pretty easy. But if you have a lot of floor to do, you may want to get something bigger. For this room, like I said, I just used the hand sander, I did the cracks, and then I just sanded the entire floor with that same sander. I actually wanted to do this look all over my house, so I ended up going into town after I did the tiny Thai room with a hand sander and getting a drum sander from a rental place and doing my living room and my bedroom with that sander, because hand sanding both those rooms, which are very big rooms, would have taken forever. I decided to go with a cabinet stain, semi-transparent for deck and siding, only because I didn't want non-transparent, because that'd just be like painting the floor. So I wanted to stain the floor, which is why I got that semi-transparent, so it was actual stain that would soak into the wood. You'd be able to see the wood grain underneath it, and I wouldn't just be painting over it. I purchased this stain at a local hardware store, and I actually had them mix it for me. At that store, the only thing they really had were normal wood colors, American oak, some darker woods and things like that, and obviously I wanted to go with a different kind of color, so I decided to go with a deep forest light green, and they did have some examples there, and I just took them up to the desk. She scanned it with her machine, and then she mixed the color for me. And she did go ahead and leave the white out because it did ask for them to mix white in that color, and I think that actually helped it. So if you go and get your stain mixed, you may want to suggest, if it does tell them to put white in the mixture, to leave that out, just because I'm very happy with this color. And then my following colors that I got from there, I did the same thing, told them to leave the white out. Okay, the second thing you'll need is some kind of epoxy or clear coat. I went with Valspar Premium Clear Coating, only because it would definitely protect the floor from any water damage or anything like that if it could protect a garage floor. Now, I did find this at Lowe's or Home Depot, I don't remember which one, and I bought my first 2 cans there, first 2 gallons, and then when I needed to order more, instead of going to the store, I actually looked online, and it was a lot cheaper online, so I'll probably buy any other following gallons online, because who doesn't like to save money? I think it was about $50 cheaper. Here are some of the supplies I used. You can see the stain there. I had a couple of rollers, some other things. Here's a list of all the items now. The stain came in about $50, and the epoxy coating I think was about a little under $100. So really those were the most expensive items. Everything else was fairly cheap, probably about $10 or less. So overall the look is very reasonable to create. Like I said, those two things were the most expensive, and I have a lot of stain left. So you may even want to get a smaller thing of stain, maybe a pint or even smaller than that. I barely used maybe like a 20th of my can. I still have a whole can left over, which is fine because I can use it in other places. But just so if you're worried about spending a lot of money, you don't have to spend $50 on stain if you have a floor that isn't that big, because it's not going to take that whole gallon of stain. Alright, now it's time to get staining. As you can see in this picture, I went ahead and I put the painter's tape down. I made a stencil for myself out of cardboard and cut that out, and I just freehanded it on the cardboard, cut it out, and then I would lay it in between the painter's tape and the wall, and I would trace around it with a pencil, with a colored pencil that was kind of the same color as the green stain, and then I went back with the actual stain and filled in all the spots. Now I do have a straight edge, so I did measure away from the wall about that size of that ruler, just so I'd have that spacing there before the pattern started. And that first layer I did was kind of light, so I went back and I did it darker over there, and then as I went around I mixed the stain better and it was a darker color because I kind of had too much watery substance at the top, so that's why the first layer was so light. As you can see, there's my painter's tray with a stick, and I brought the stick out because that stain tends to settle at the bottom, so I did have to mix it a few times as I was staining just to make sure that the color was consistent throughout. Now on the corners I did have an issue because the pattern I cut out of the cardboard would not bend around those corners, so I actually just freehanded a leaf in the corner. All of the ones that were 90 degrees or smaller, anything that was bigger than 90 degrees, I could bend that form around because cardboard's pretty pliable and make that pattern continue throughout the room. Once I got that pattern completed all the way around the room, I did go ahead and in the closet I freehanded a Thai temple that I found, and then in the center I did put in Thai the word dragon because I obviously love dragons, so I did that in that closet, and then I think I'll do that in my other closets just because it's kind of a weird theme that I can carry throughout the house and no one will really know what it is unless they ask me. And then after I did that pattern and filled in the closet, I got the bigger brush and I went in and just crisscrossed the brush over itself and filled in all of that empty space in the center of the floor. Now before I reached the middle, I did notice that the center of the room was kind of boring, so I went ahead and I freehanded a Thai Buddha in the middle and then continued my crisscross motion with the big brush around the Buddha so that that would be in the negative, just like the castle in the closet and then the pattern along the outside edge. And finally at that point I was done staining. Here are a few pictures of what it looked like after I finished the staining process. As you can see, I did fill in almost all of the center of the room with that green stain that I purchased, and then I kept that pattern around the outside blank so it was in the negative, and I did the same with that Buddha in the middle and once again with that castle in the closet. Once I was done staining, it was time to do that epoxy clear coat, and all I did was pretty much follow the exact directions that they had on the box. You had to mix it forever, wait a little bit, mix again to make sure you had this milky, kind of gross, whitish yellow color. And then once you have that, you're ready to paint it on the floor. And they do suggest doing a 2-inch border around, which is why you need that 2-inch brush. So I did my 2-inch border around the entire room and around anything that I thought, cracks or anything that I thought would be difficult to get to. And then I did the rest of the floor with a big roller, and it turned out pretty good. I ended up doing 2 layers in the end, and I actually will probably have to go back and do just one more layer, only on the parts where there isn't stain, because where there was no stain it obviously soaked up the clear coat a lot more easily and it didn't just hover on top. So I will go back over the pattern. It looked okay, it was still shiny, but I may go over that just one more time. And then the Buddha in the middle, it didn't get very shiny because it absorbed all of that clear coat, so I'm just going to do one more layer on that, and I'll probably wait to do that once I start to epoxy one of the other rooms, only because that epoxy that you use is only good for 4 hours. After that you do have to throw it away. Alright, you are now completely done. Take a moment to look all the way around the room. Try to ignore all the flaws, there'll probably be a couple. Just look at how spectacular the floor is that you did, and know that no one else is going to have a floor just like that one, especially not paying what you did to create it. Edging looks nice. Definitely happy with that green. Definitely reminds me of something Asian-y or of Thailand, especially with that edging, because it reminds me of a lot of the artwork they have, especially when I go into Thai restaurants. Love Thai food. That shine's very nice. I like that epoxy, the way it makes it look lacquered. Very nice. And just remember, you did all of that with some cardboard, some painter's tape, and look at that result. Pretty awesome if I do say so myself. Now there are a couple issues. As you can see, I wore my socks when I did the clear coat and it did pull up a few of the pieces. I'll just go back and restain those and then put that gloss back on top. And then if you look at the Buddha, it's a little less shiny than the rest of the floor. And that's just because that unstained area didn't absorb as much of the lacquer as the stained area. So next time I do a second room, I'll just go back and with whatever I have left over from the other room, go over those spots that I can see that aren't quite as shiny, just to add another layer of that clear epoxy. Here's a sneak preview for next time. This is the bedroom, and I'm doing the same thing, just with a stain. I got a phoenix and a dragon in there and some edge work. So either join me next time, or you can take a sneak peek at my blog at OurOctagon.com and see what's going on there, and I'll do the same thing. I'll do a tutorial video for that so you guys can see how that's done. All right, thanks. Bye-bye. And if anyone out there followed this tutorial and did their own floor, please send me pictures. I'd love to see them, and I may even post some of the really awesome ones on my blog.